Mom, step out of the vehicle immediately. This BMW was reported stolen 20 minutes ago. Officer Jake Morrison's hand instinctively moved toward his service weapon as he approached the gleaming black BMW X7 parked outside Roosevelt Elementary School. The afternoon sun caught the vehicle's pristine paint, highlighting every expensive curve of the $85,000 luxury SUV. Behind the wheel sat a black woman in her early 40s, wearing a simple navy blazer and gold earrings. Her composed expression didn't match what Morrison expected from a car thief. But the math was simple in his mind. Black woman plus luxury BMW in an upscale neighborhood equals suspicious activity. "Officer, there must be some mistake," the woman said calmly, her hands visible on the steering wheel. Through the passenger window, a leather briefcase sat prominently displayed, its brass corners catching the light. Inside that briefcase, hidden beneath quarterly crime statistics and budget reports, lay a badge that would change everything. What Morrison couldn't see was the small engraved nameplate on the briefcase's handle, Chief Patricia Williams, Metro Police Department. What he didn't know was that this woman had been his ultimate superior for the past 3 years. What he couldn't imagine was that in exactly 47 minutes, Chief Williams was supposed to address the city council about a $2.3 million budget increase for police sensitivity training specifically designed to prevent situations exactly like this one. The irony was about to become devastating. "Ma'am, I need you to exit the vehicle with your hands visible," Morrison repeated, his voice carrying the authority of 8 years on the force. Around them, parents arriving for school pickup began to notice the commotion. Cell phones emerged from purses and pockets. Have you ever wondered what happens when the system fails so completely that a police officer tries to arrest his own boss? When unconscious bias becomes so powerful that badges and authority become invisible beneath skin color. The next 30 minutes would answer those questions in ways that would shock a nation and force an entire police department to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice, power, and the dangerous assumptions that destroy careers in an instant. The call had come through dispatch at 2:47 p.m., stolen BMW X7, license plate PCW-024, last seen heading toward Roosevelt Elementary. Officer Morrison, patrolling the affluent Riverside district, spotted the vehicle immediately. Black BMW X7, exact license match, driven by someone who didn't fit the profile of the neighborhood's typical residents. Chief Patricia Williams had been driving that same route for 3 years, ever since her daughter Maya started kindergarten at Roosevelt Elementary. The BMW was her personal vehicle, purchased with savings from 22 years of police service that had taken her from beat cop to the highest office in the Metro Police Department. But Morrison didn't know any of that. What he knew was that luxury car thefts had increased 34% in the district over the past 6 months. What he knew was that the caller had been certain the vehicle was stolen because that type of person doesn't belong in this neighborhood. The caller had been Margaret Thornton, a 67-year-old retired insurance adjuster who had watched Chief Williams park the same BMW in the same spot every Tuesday for 3 years. But today, instead of recognizing a familiar face, Thornton had seen only what her unconscious bias allowed, a black woman who obviously couldn't afford such an expensive vehicle. "Mom, step out of the vehicle," Morrison repeated, his training taking over. 8 years of police work had taught him to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that this situation was exactly what it appeared to be, a car theft in progress. Chief Williams slowly opened the driver's door, her movements deliberate and calm. Her 22 years of law enforcement experience had taught her that sudden movements during police encounters could escalate situations dangerously. What she didn't expect was to be on the receiving end of that training. "Officer Morrison," she read from his name tag, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had commanded respect in countless police briefings. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, ma'am. This vehicle was reported stolen. I need to see your driver's license, registration, and proof of ownership." Around them, the school pickup crowd began to gather. Roosevelt Elementary served the children of doctors, lawyers, business executives, and other professionals, including several off-duty police officers who would have recognized Chief Williams immediately if they'd been present. But they weren't, and Morrison's backup was still 5 minutes away. "The registration and ownership documents are in my briefcase," Chief Williams said, gesturing toward the passenger seat. "May I retrieve them?" "No, ma'am. Keep your hands visible. I'll retrieve the documents myself." This was the moment when everything began to unravel. Morrison approached the passenger side, opened the door, and reached for the leather briefcase. His fingers brushed against papers, files, and official documents. But he was looking for vehicle registration, not reading the letterhead that would have immediately identified the briefcase's owner. "Officer Morrison," Chief Williams said, her patience beginning to wear thin. "I need you to look at the nameplate on that briefcase handle." But Morrison was too focused on his search to pay attention to nameplates. His adrenaline was high, his confidence absolute. He had caught a car thief, and nothing was going to shake his certainty. "Ma'am, I need you to place your hands behind your back." The crowd gasped. Cell phone cameras started recording. A live stream began on TikTok with viewer counts that would eventually reach hundreds of thousands. "Officer Morrison," Chief Williams said, her voice now carrying unmistakable authority, "before you do something that will end your career, I strongly suggest you look at that nameplate." But Morrison had already pulled out his handcuffs. "Step back, everyone," Morrison called to the growing crowd of parents and children. "This is police business." Among the onlookers was Dr. Sarah Chen, whose husband, Detective Mike Chen, worked directly under Chief Williams. Sarah recognized her immediately, but was too shocked by what she was witnessing to speak up. She fumbled for her phone to call her husband, but the situation was moving too fast. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for possession of stolen property," Morrison announced, approaching with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Officer Morrison," Chief Williams interrupted, her voice cutting through his Miranda rights like a blade. "I'm ordering you to stop this arrest immediately and examine the identification in my briefcase." "Ordering me?" Morrison laughed, the sound bitter and dismissive. "Ma'am, you're not in a position to order anyone to do anything." That's when Chief Williams made her choice. She could continue to play by Morrison's rules, allow herself to be handcuffed and humiliated in front of the school community, and sort everything out at the station. Or she could exercise the authority that she'd earned through to decades of exemplary service. She chose authority. "Officer Morrison, I am Chief Patricia Williams of the Metro Police Department. Badge number 01. I'm your commanding officer, and I am ordering you to stand down immediately." The crowd fell silent. Morrison's hand froze halfway to his handcuffs. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then his training reasserted itself. Anyone could claim to be anyone. "Ma'am, I don't know what game you're playing, but impersonating a police officer is a felony. You're just making this worse for yourself." Dr. Chen finally found her voice. "Officer, that really is Chief Williams. My husband is Detective Chen. He works for her." Morrison turned toward the crowd. "Ma'am, please step back and do not interfere with this arrest." But Chief Williams had reached her limit. 22 years of service, 3 years as chief, countless community meetings about police community relations, and now she was being arrested by one of her own officers for the crime of driving while black in an expensive car. "Officer Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the full weight of command authority, "open that briefcase. Look at the documents inside, read the nameplates, and understand that you are about to make the biggest mistake of your career." Something in her tone, the absolute certainty, the quiet confidence, the unmistakable ring of authority finally penetrated Morrison's certainty. His hand moved toward the briefcase. Inside, the first document he saw was a memo from the Metro Police Department bearing the official seal. The header read, "From the office of Chief Patricia Williams." Below that, a photograph showed the same woman who stood before him, wearing the dress uniform of a police chief. Morrison's face went white. The second document was even more devastating, a budget proposal for expanded sensitivity training, authored by Chief Williams and scheduled for presentation to the City Council in 45 minutes. The training was specifically designed to address racial profiling in traffic stops. Morrison's career flashed before his eyes. The third document was a personnel file, his own. Annual reviews, commendations, disciplinary actions. At the top, in Chief Williams' handwriting, Officer Morrison shows promise but needs continued supervision regarding community interaction protocols. His hands began to shake. "Oh God," Morrison whispered. Chief Williams, I didn't know ... You didn't know because you didn't look, she replied, her voice steady despite the humiliation she'd endured. You saw a black woman with an expensive car and made assumptions based on prejudice rather than evidence. The crowd pressed closer. Dr. Chen was live streaming on Facebook. A local news van had appeared, drawn by social media reports of a police incident at Roosevelt Elementary. Chief, I'm so sorry. I was just following procedure. Procedure, Chief Williams' eyebrow raised in the expression that every officer in the department had learned to respect and fear. Officer Morrison, what procedure authorizes arresting someone without examining their identification? What procedure allows you to ignore witness statements? What procedure permits you to refuse to examine ownership documents? Morrison had no answer because there was no answer. He had violated every protocol in the book because his unconscious bias had convinced him that protocols didn't apply to this situation. Chief Williams, he stammered, how can I fix this? You can't, she replied simply, but we can learn from it. Dr. Sarah Chen's hands trembled as she held her phone, the live Facebook stream now reaching 15,847 viewers and climbing exponentially. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. Is that really Chief Williams? Call the news, this is insane. That cop is done for. But she wasn't the only one recording. Across the Roosevelt Elementary pickup area, a dozen phones captured every angle of the unfolding drama. Marcus Johnson, a freelance journalist picking up his nephew, immediately recognized the story's magnitude and began documenting with professional precision. This is Marcus Johnson reporting live from Roosevelt Elementary, he whispered into his phone's microphone. We're witnessing what appears to be a catastrophic case of racial profiling as a police officer attempts to arrest Metro Police Chief Patricia Williams for allegedly stealing her own BMW. The viewer count on his Instagram live exploded, 23,891. 31,247, 47,623. The hashtags #Chief Williams arrest and #driving while black began trending locally, then regionally, then nationally within minutes. In the crowd, 8-year-old Maya Williams watched in confusion as her mother, the woman she knew as the strongest person in the world, stood with her hands behind her back while a police officer fumbled through her briefcase. Maya didn't understand racial profiling or unconscious bias, but she understood that something was terribly wrong. Mommy. Maya's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She had slipped away from her after-school care group and was running toward the scene. Maya, stay back, Chief Williams called out, her composure cracking for the first time. The sight of her daughter witnessing this humiliation was more devastating than anything Morrison had done. Dr. Chen immediately moved toward Maya, her maternal instincts overriding her shock at the situation. Honey, let's wait over here while your mom handles some work business, okay? But Maya was her mother's daughter, intelligent, observant, and unafraid to speak truth to power. That man is being mean to my mommy, she announced loudly enough for the crowd to hear. My mommy is the boss of all the police. The declaration rippled through the gathering like electricity. Parents who had been uncertain about intervening suddenly found their voices. Is this for real? Demanded Jennifer Walsh, president of the Roosevelt Elementary PTA. Chief Williams, is that really you? Jennifer. Yes, it's me, Chief Williams replied, her voice strained with the effort of remaining professional while watching her daughter witness her humiliation. There's been a significant misunderstanding. Morrison, still processing the contents of the briefcase, looked up with growing horror. The documents were unmistakable: official Metro Police Department letterhead, budget proposals, personnel files, and most damning of all, a schedule showing that Chief Patricia Williams was supposed to address the City Council about police sensitivity training in exactly 37 minutes. Chief, Morrison whispered, his voice barely audible. Chief, oh God, what have I done? But the crowd had erupted into chaos. Parents were shouting questions, children were crying from the commotion, and every phone in the area was broadcasting live to social media platforms across the internet. Step back. Everyone step back, Morrison shouted, but his authority had evaporated completely. How do you command a crowd when you've just tried to arrest your own boss? Margaret Thornton, the 67-year-old woman who had made the original stolen car report, pushed through the crowd with her walker, her face flushed with embarrassment and growing realization. She had seen Chief Williams park in that same spot every Tuesday for 3 years, but today her unconscious bias had made her see a criminal instead of a familiar neighbor. "Officer," Margaret said, her voice shaking with shame. "Officer, I think I made a terrible mistake. I'm the one who called about the car, but now I realize. I know this woman. I've seen her here every week for years." The confession hit the crowd like a physical blow. The false report hadn't come from a stranger or a victim of actual car theft. It had come from someone who knew Chief Williams by sight but had chosen to see criminality instead of familiarity. Dr. Chen, still live streaming to her 52,000 Facebook followers, turned the camera toward Margaret. "Mum, are you saying you made a false police report?" I thought ... double quotes. Margaret stumbled over her words, the weight of what she'd triggered settling on her shoulders. She just looked. I didn't think someone like her could own such an expensive car. The statement hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Someone like her, for words that contained centuries of prejudice, assumption, and unconscious bias. Chief Williams closed her eyes briefly, feeling the familiar weight of fighting battles she thought she'd left behind when she'd earned her badge 22 years ago. She'd climbed every rank in law enforcement, commanded respect from mayors and city councils, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, but she was still vulnerable to the assumption that black women couldn't legitimately own nice things. By 3:15 p.m., exactly 28 minutes after the initial stop, the story had exploded across social media platforms nationwide. Hashtag Chief Williams arrest was trending #1 on Twitter, surpassing political scandals and celebrity gossip. The raw footage from multiple angles created a comprehensive document of institutional failure in real time. Channel 7 News anchor Jennifer Martinez received the tip while preparing for the evening broadcast. Within 8 minutes, she was in the news van racing toward Roosevelt Elementary, her camera operator and field producer trailing behind. "This is potentially the biggest police accountability story of the year," Martinez told her producer via phone as they navigated traffic. "A police officer trying to arrest his own chief for driving while black. This is going to be national news within hours." She was right. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News were already picking up the social media feeds. The story had everything news directors loved: clear video evidence, obvious irony, racial tension, and the kind of shocking reversal that kept viewers glued to their screens. At Metro Police Headquarters, Deputy Chief Robert Martinez was in his office reviewing budget proposals when his phone started buzzing with calls from reporters, city councilors, and concerned citizens who had seen the viral videos. "Sir," his secretary Janet rushed in without knocking, "you need to see this immediately. It's about Chief Williams." The live streams played on Janet's phone showed his boss and mentor standing beside her BMW while Officer Morrison riffled through her briefcase like she was a common criminal. The optics were devastating, but the implications were worse. "Get me Commissioner Hayes on the phone," Deputy Chief Martinez ordered. "And contact the mayor's office. They need to know about this before it gets worse." But it was already worse than anyone could imagine. The story was spreading beyond law enforcement into communities across the nation where similar incidents had occurred without resolution. Chief Williams had become a symbol of every black professional who had been questioned, doubted, or suspected simply for existing in spaces where their presence was deemed unusual. At Roosevelt Elementary, Principal Dr. Amanda Foster was dealing with her own crisis. Parents were demanding answers about why police activity was allowed on school grounds during pickup time. Others wanted to know if their children were safe from racial profiling. The phone in her office hadn't stopped ringing for 15 minutes. Dr. Foster, her assistant, announced over the intercom, "Channel 7 News is here asking for a statement about the incident in our parking lot." Through her office window, Dr. Foster could see the news van, the crowd of parents, and Chief Williams still standing beside her BMW while Officer Morrison appeared to be having what looked like a panic attack as he read through official police documents. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's ability to control it. Maya Williams, still being comforted by Dr. Chen, watched the chaos with a clarity that only children possess. "Why is everyone so upset?" she asked. "My mommy didn't do anything wrong. She just came to pick me up like she always does." The innocent question cut through the adult complexity of racial profiling, unconscious bias, and institutional failure. Chief Williams had done exactly what she did every Tuesday: drive her personally owned vehicle to her daughter's school to participate in the most normal parental activity possible. Yet here she stood, humiliated in front of her child's school community, while her own officer treated her like a criminal and social media documented every moment of her degradation. Dr. Chen knelt down to Maya's level, struggling to find age-appropriate words to explain adult failures. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, honey. Big mistakes, but your mommy is handling it very well. Will the mean policeman say sorry to my mommy?" Maya asked, her 8-year-old sense of justice demanding accountability. "I think he will, sweetheart. I think he'll be very sorry indeed." At 3:22 p.m., Deputy Chief Martinez's call reached Commissioner Hayes just as the commissioner was leaving a budget meeting with the city manager. The timing couldn't have been worse or more ironic. "Bob, tell me you're calling about something other than Patricia being arrested by one of our own officers," Commissioner Hayes said, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd been managing police crises for 30 years. "I wish I could, sir. We've got a code red situation developing at Roosevelt Elementary. Officer Morrison has Chief Williams detained on suspicion of vehicle theft. It's all over social media, and the optics are ... double quotes." Martinez paused, searching for adequate words. "Sir, it's catastrophic." Commissioner Hayes closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impending disaster. Patricia Williams wasn't just his police chief, she was his protege, the officer he'd personally mentored through the ranks, and one of the most respected law enforcement leaders in the state. "How bad is it, Bob?" "Viral, sir. National news is already picking it up. We're looking at potential federal investigation, civil rights lawsuits, and complete loss of public trust. This is the kind of incident that destroys departments." The commissioner's mind immediately went to damage control. "Get units to Roosevelt Elementary immediately. Not to support Morrison, to protect Patricia and manage the scene. And get me the mayor's office. She needs to hear this from us before she hears it from CNN." But Mayor Linda Rodriguez was already hearing about it. Her press secretary had burst into a budget meeting to show her the trending hashtags and viral videos. As the city's first Latina mayor, Rodriguez understood the political implications of racial profiling incidents. They could destroy careers, spark protests, and undermine years of community relations work. "Get me Chief Williams on the phone," Mayor Rodriguez ordered. "And prepare a statement condemning racial profiling while supporting our police force. This is going to be a tightrope walk." Her press secretary, James Kim, was already drafting talking points. "Ma'am, the statements need to be perfect. One wrong word and we'll have protests, federal investigators, and national media camping outside City Hall." The political calculus was brutal. Chief Williams was popular in both the black community and among police officers, a rare combination that had made her invaluable to Rodriguez's administration. Any response that didn't fully support her would be seen as betrayal, but responses that were too critical of the police could create internal departmental problems. Back at Roosevelt Elementary, the crowd had grown to over 150 people. Parents who had completed their pickups were parking and returning to witness the unprecedented scene. High school students were live streaming on TikTok, adding their commentary to feeds that were reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers. "Yo, this is actually insane," 17-year-old Destiny Harper narrated to her 45,000 TikTok followers. "A cop is literally trying to arrest his own boss for being black with a nice car. Like, how do you even recover from this kind of stupidity?" Her video had already been shared 12,000 times, adding to the viral momentum that was making the incident impossible to contain or control. Officer Morrison stood frozen beside the BMW, still holding Chief Williams' briefcase, his career disintegrating in real time. 8 years of police service, countless arrests, community policing awards, favorable performance reviews, all of it meaningless now because he'd made the one mistake that no law enforcement officer could survive: arresting his own chief based on racial assumptions. His backup units were arriving, their officers immediately recognizing the catastrophic nature of the situation. Sergeant Lisa Thompson, Morrison's direct supervisor, approached with the careful steps of someone walking through a minefield. "Jake," she said quietly, "step away from the chief. Step away right now." But Morrison seemed paralyzed by the enormity of his mistake. "Sarge, the call came in ... stolen BMW ... She matched the description ... double quotes. "Jake, the description was black woman driving expensive car. Do you understand what you've done?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Morrison had followed a report based purely on racial profiling, had ignored evidence and witness statements, and had nearly arrested the highest-ranking officer in the department. Sergeant Thompson turned to Chief Williams, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Chief, on behalf of the entire department, I apologize for this inexcusable breach of protocol and basic human decency." Chief Williams nodded acknowledgement, but her attention was focused on her daughter Maya, who was still watching from Dr. Chen's protective embrace. This was the moment that would shape Maya's understanding of her place in the world, her trust in justice systems, and her belief in her own worth. "Sergeant Thompson," Chief Williams said, her voice carrying the authority that had commanded respect for 2 decades. Officer Morrison made a series of choices that led to this moment. Now we all have choices to make about what comes next. By 3:45 p.m., the Roosevelt Elementary incident had become a national news story. CNN's breaking news banner read "Police officer attempts to arrest own chief," while Fox News led with "Racial profiling scandal rocks police department." MSNBC was already promoting a special segment for their evening broadcast when Bias Blinds, a case study in institutional failure. The story had transcended local news because it perfectly encapsulated the national conversation about police accountability, racial profiling, and the persistence of bias even within diverse institutions. Chief Williams represented the American dream of merit and achievement, while Officer Morrison represented the nightmare of prejudice disguised as law enforcement. At the White House, press secretary briefings were being interrupted with questions about federal investigation possibilities. Civil rights organizations were issuing statements. Legal experts were appearing on cable news shows to discuss the potential for massive civil rights lawsuits. But at Roosevelt Elementary, the focus remained intensely personal. Chief Williams stood beside her BMW, watching her 8-year-old daughter process the reality that her mother, the woman Maya thought was invincible, could be reduced to a criminal suspect simply because of the color of her skin. "Mommy," Maya called out, breaking free from Dr. Chen's protective embrace, "are you in trouble?" Chief Williams knelt down to her daughter's level, her professional composure cracking as maternal instincts took over. "No, baby. Mommy is not in trouble. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and this policeman made a very big mistake." "Is he going to say sorry?" "I hope so, sweetheart." Officer Morrison, standing just a few feet away, felt the weight of that hope like a physical blow. He had created this situation, had traumatized a child, had humiliated a respected leader, and had damaged the reputation of the entire police force because of assumptions he hadn't even realized he was making. "Chief Williams," Morrison said, his voice breaking. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible, terrible mistake." Maya looked at the officer with a direct gaze that only children can manage. "Why did you think my mommy was bad?" The question was simple, but the answer was complex enough to fill sociology textbooks. How do you explain unconscious bias to an 8-year-old? How do you tell a child that some adults see danger in dark skin and criminality in success? Morrison knelt down to Maya's level, understanding that his response to this child might be more important than any statement he made to the media or his supervisors. "Maya, I made assumptions about your mom based on what she looked like instead of who she really is. That was wrong, and I'm very sorry. Your mommy is an amazing person who works very hard to keep everyone safe." Maya considered this with the seriousness that children bring to adult failures. "Will you learn to be better?" "I'll try my best, Maya. I promise I'll try my best." The exchange was captured by dozens of phones and live-streamed to hundreds of thousands of viewers. The image of a white police officer apologizing to a black child for profiling her mother became one of the most shared photographs of the year. But individual apologies, no matter how heartfelt, couldn't address the systemic issues that had led to this moment. Chief Williams understood that this incident was bigger than Morrison's career, bigger than her personal humiliation, and bigger than one department's crisis management. "Officer Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her command of a 1,200-officer police force. "Your apology to my daughter is noted and appreciated. But the real question is, what are you going to do to ensure this never happens to anyone else's child?" The crowd pressed closer, sensing that this was the pivotal moment when consequences would be determined and accountability would be assigned. The live streams showed viewer counts in the hundreds of thousands as people across the nation waited to see how institutional failure would be addressed. Morrison stood up slowly, his 8 years of police experience warring with his understanding that his career was probably over. "Chief, I'll do whatever you think is right. I know I don't deserve your consideration, but if there's a way for this to become something positive ... double quotes. "There is," Chief Williams replied, her tone shifting from personal hurt to professional leadership. "But it requires more than apologies, it requires transformation." News vans from 5 different television stations had arrived at Roosevelt Elementary, their satellite dishes extended and reporters preparing for live broadcasts to audiences across the nation. The parking lot had been transformed into an impromptu media circus, with camera crews establishing perimeters and reporters interviewing parents, witnesses, and anyone willing to provide commentary on the unfolding drama. Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News positioned herself strategically to capture both Chief Williams and Officer Morrison in her live shot. This is Jennifer Martinez reporting from Roosevelt Elementary, where we're witnessing an unprecedented situation. Metro Police Chief Patricia Williams was detained by one of her own officers in what appears to be a clear case of racial profiling. The live broadcast reached 847,000 viewers across the network's affiliate stations, with the story trending on every social media platform. Comments flooded the network's social media pages faster than moderators could review them. "This is exactly why we need police reform. Fire that cop immediately." Chief Williams handled this with incredible grace. How does a police officer not know his own chief? This is what systemic racism looks like. But Chief Williams wasn't focused on the media attention or the viral social media responses. Her attention was centered on the choice she was about to offer Officer Morrison, a choice that would determine not only his career but the direction of police reform in their city and potentially across the nation. "Officer Morrison," she began, her voice carrying the measured authority that had made her one of the most respected police chiefs in the state. "You have 3 options, and your decision will be binding and immediate." The crowd fell silent. Parents stopped their conversations. Children stopped their chatter. The livestream viewers, now numbering over 200,000 across multiple platforms, watched with the intensity of people witnessing history. Option 1, Chief Williams continued, "You can face departmental charges for conduct unbecoming an officer, violation of civil rights, and failure to follow established protocol. This path leads to suspension, investigation, and likely termination. Your police career ends today." Morrison's face went white. 8 years of service, his family's financial security, his identity as a law enforcement officer, everything would disappear if he chose this path. Option 2, Chief Williams said, "You can accept immediate demotion to probationary status, complete 300 hours of bias training and community service, and become a case study for police reform initiatives. You would testify before city councils, speak at police academies, and help develop training programs to prevent similar incidents." The offer was unprecedented. Instead of termination, Chief Williams was offering Morrison a chance to transform his mistake into a tool for systemic change. Option 3, she concluded, "You can resign from the police force immediately with a neutral recommendation, avoiding criminal charges or civil liability, but forfeit any future role in law enforcement. You disappear from this profession forever, and someone else becomes responsible for ensuring this never happens again." The choice was brilliant in its construction. Option 1 provided justice but no education. Option 3 provided escape but no accountability. Option 2 provided both consequences and opportunity for transformation. Maya Williams watched the adults around her with the intensity of someone trying to understand a world that didn't make sense. Why had this man thought her mother was a criminal? Why did people need to learn not to be mean to others? Why couldn't everyone just be nice? Dr. Chen continued live streaming on Facebook, her viewer count climbing to 89,000 as people shared the stream across their networks. "This is extraordinary," she whispered into her phone's microphone. Chief Williams is offering this officer a chance at redemption instead of just punishment. Margaret Thornton, the elderly woman whose false report had triggered the entire incident, pushed forward through the crowd. Her walker clinked against the asphalt as she approached the center of the drama, her face flushed with shame and determination. "Excuse me," Margaret said, her voice shaking but clear. "Excuse me, I need to say something." Chief Williams turned toward the voice, recognizing the woman from countless Tuesday afternoon pickups but seeing her clearly for the first time. "I'm Margaret Thornton, and I'm the one who called police about your car being stolen." Margaret's confession carried across the crowd and into the live streams. "I've seen you park here every Tuesday for 3 years, but today I saw a black woman with an expensive car and assumed criminality instead of recognizing a neighbor." The admission hit the crowd like a physical blow. The false police report hadn't come from a victim of actual crime or a stranger reporting suspicious activity. It had come from someone who knew Chief Williams by sight but had chosen prejudice over familiarity. "Mrs. Thornton," Chief Williams said, her voice carrying no anger despite the humiliation the woman had caused, "why are you telling us this now?" "Because I need to take responsibility for my part in this," Margaret replied, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Officer Morrison made mistakes, but I created the situation that led to those mistakes. I made a false police report based on nothing but racial assumptions." The crowd stirred uneasily. Parents looked at each other, wondering how many of them had made similar assumptions about their neighbors, their colleagues, their fellow community members. Marcus Johnson, the freelance journalist, captured Margaret's confession on his phone while providing commentary for his 156,000 Instagram Live viewers. "Yo, this story just got even deeper. The person who made the false report is admitting to racial profiling. This isn't just about police training, this is about community bias." Officer Morrison stood in the center of this expanding circle of accountability, understanding that his choice would affect not only his own future but the futures of every police officer who would face similar situations in the years to come. "Chief Williams," Morrison said, his voice steady despite the weight of decision, "I need you to know that I joined law enforcement to help people, to protect communities, to serve with honor. Today I did the opposite of all those things." "What's your choice, Officer Morrison?" Chief Williams asked. The parking lot fell silent except for the clicking of camera shutters and the quiet hum of live streams broadcasting to hundreds of thousands of viewers across the nation. Morrison looked at Maya Williams, the 8-year-old girl who had asked him to learn to be better. He looked at Margaret Thornton, the elderly woman who had taken responsibility for her role in creating this situation. He looked at Chief Williams, the leader whose rights he had violated and whose dignity he had tried to strip away. "I choose option 2, Morrison said, his voice carrying across the parking lot and into the phones broadcasting his decision to the world. "I want to learn, I want to change, I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else." The crowd erupted in surprised murmurs. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from approval to skepticism. News anchors began crafting analyses of this unprecedented resolution to a racial profiling incident, but Chief Williams wasn't finished. There was still one more element to address, one more layer of accountability that would determine whether this incident became a footnote in police misconduct history or a landmark case study in institutional transformation. "Officer Morrison," Chief Williams said, producing a tablet from her BMW's glove compartment, "your choice requires documentation. This isn't just a verbal agreement, it's a binding contract that will be monitored by civilian oversight boards and community organizations." The formality surprised everyone. Chief Williams had clearly been prepared for this moment, understanding that real accountability required measurable commitments and external oversight. "The terms are non-negotiable," she continued, typing on the tablet with the efficiency of someone who had drafted countless legal documents throughout her career. "Immediate demotion from officer to probationary officer with a 40% salary reduction for the first year. Complete forfeiture of overtime opportunities until completion of all training requirements." Morrison nodded, understanding that consequences were necessary for accountability. 300 hours of bias training conducted by community organizations, civil rights groups, and cultural competency experts. This training will be documented, evaluated, and reported quarterly to the Civilian Oversight Board. The training requirement was unprecedented in scope. Most police departments required 8 to 16 hours of bias training annually. Morrison was committing to nearly 8 weeks of intensive education about unconscious prejudice, cultural sensitivity, and constitutional law. Community service totaling to 100 hours focused on organizations serving communities of color. You'll work directly with the people most affected by police misconduct, understanding their experiences and perspectives. The community service requirement ensured that Morrison's education wouldn't be purely academic. He would work alongside people who had experienced the kind of profiling he had perpetrated. Monthly testimony before police academy classes, city council meetings, and community forums. You will share your experience, explain your mistakes, and help others recognize similar biases in their own thinking. The testimony requirement was perhaps the most challenging aspect of Morrison's commitment. He would have to repeatedly relive his mistake, explain his thought processes, and accept public scrutiny of his actions. Finally, Chief Williams said, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority, you will serve as a subject in a comprehensive study of unconscious bias in law enforcement. Your case will be analyzed by researchers at the State University with findings published in peer-reviewed journals and used to inform police training nationwide. The research component meant that Morrison's mistake would become part of the permanent record of police accountability efforts. Future officers would learn from his experience for decades to come. Dr. Chen, still live streaming to her 127,000 Facebook followers, whispered commentary into her phone, "This isn't just about punishing one officer. Chief Williams is creating a systematic approach to addressing bias in law enforcement. This could change how police departments handle these incidents nationwide." The contract terms were severe but fair, punitive but educational. Morrison would face real consequences for his actions while contributing to efforts that could prevent similar incidents in the future. Officer Morrison, Chief Williams said, extending the tablet toward him. This contract represents your choice between career destruction and career transformation. Sign it, and you begin a difficult journey that might save your profession. Refuse it, and you'll face traditional disciplinary procedures that will likely end your law enforcement career permanently. Morrison took the tablet, his hands shaking slightly as he read through the detailed terms. The contract was thorough, specific, and legally binding. There would be no backing out, no reducing the requirements, no escaping the accountability he was accepting. Margaret Thornton stepped forward again, her walker clicking against the asphalt. "Young man," she said to Morrison, "I want to be part of your training. I want to help you understand how people like me create situations like this through our own prejudices." The offer was unexpected but powerful. The woman whose false report had triggered the incident was volunteering to help educate the officer who had acted on that report. "Mrs. Thornton," Chief Williams said, "that's an excellent suggestion. Community accountability requires participation from all stakeholders. Your perspective would be valuable in helping other officers understand how citizen bias can influence police responses." Maya Williams, who had been quietly watching the adult negotiations, spoke up with the clarity that only children possess. "Is everyone going to learn to be better now?" The question cut through the complexity of contracts, consequences, and institutional reform. At its core, this was about learning about people examining their biases, changing their behaviors, and committing to treating others with dignity and respect. "Yes, baby," Chief Williams said, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "Everyone is going to learn to be better." Morrison signed the contract with careful precision, understanding that his signature represented not just acceptance of consequences but commitment to transformation. The document would be filed with the city clerk, distributed to oversight boards, and monitored by community organizations. Officer Morrison, Chief Williams said, accepting the signed tablet, "Your rehabilitation begins immediately. Report to headquarters tomorrow at 0800 for processing of your demotion and to receive your training schedule." The formality of the moment impressed the crowd. This wasn't just a feel-good resolution or empty promises of change, it was a legally binding agreement with specific requirements and measurable outcomes. Channel 7's Jennifer Martinez positioned herself for a closing live shot, her camera operator capturing Chief Williams, Officer Morrison, and the crowd of witnesses who had documented this unprecedented resolution to a racial profiling incident. This is Jennifer Martinez reporting from Roosevelt Elementary, where we've witnessed something remarkable. Instead of simply punishing Officer Morrison for his actions, Chief Williams has created a framework for institutional change that could serve as a model for police departments nationwide. The story was already being analyzed by legal experts, police accountability advocates, and political commentators across the nation. The footage would be used in training programs, academic studies, and legislative hearings about police reform. But for Chief Williams, the most important audience was her daughter Maya, who was learning that justice could be about education rather than just punishment, about transformation rather than just consequences. "Mommy," Maya said as the crowd began to disperse, "are you proud of how you handled the mean policeman?" Chief Williams smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown since the incident began. "I'm proud that we found a way to make something good come from something bad, baby." 3 weeks later, Officer Jake Morrison sat in a circle with 12 other police officers at the Community Justice Center, a converted warehouse that had become the epicenter of police reform training in the metro area. The room was deliberately designed to be uncomfortable folding chairs, fluorescent lighting, and walls covered with photographs of people whose lives had been affected by police misconduct. "Today we begin with a simple exercise," said Dr. Angela Rodriguez, a clinical psychologist specializing in unconscious bias training. "Each of you will share the incident that brought you here. Jake, since your case has become our primary case study, you'll go first." Morrison's hands trembled slightly as he prepared to speak. Over the past 3 weeks, his story had been dissected in newspaper editorials, analyzed on cable news shows, and discussed in police departments across the nation. But sharing it in person, with fellow officers who were struggling with their own biases, felt more challenging than any media interview. 3 weeks ago, I tried to arrest my own police chief because I saw a black woman driving a BMW and assumed she was a criminal, Morrison began, his voice steady despite the weight of admission. "I ignored evidence, dismissed witness statements, and nearly destroyed my career because of prejudices I didn't even know I carried." The other officers in the circle nodded with recognition. There was Marcus Thompson, who had pepper sprayed a Latino teenager he'd assumed was gang-affiliated. Sarah Kim, who had drawn her weapon on an elderly Asian man she'd thought was acting suspicious while tending his garden. Robert Wilson, who had handcuffed a Native American college professor during a routine traffic stop that had escalated because of his assumptions about alcohol use. Each officer had a story of bias leading to misconduct. Each had chosen education over termination. Each was beginning the difficult process of examining prejudices they'd carried unconsciously for years. The research shows that 97% of police officers believe they are not racially biased. Dr. Rodriguez continued, distributing tablets loaded with implicit association tests. "Today we're going to discover what your unconscious mind believes, regardless of what you tell yourself consciously." The tests were humbling. Morrison discovered that despite his conscious beliefs about racial equality, his unconscious mind associated black faces with criminality, poverty, and danger. The results weren't unusual. Similar biases appeared in doctors, teachers, judges, and members of every profession. But for police officers, unconscious bias could have life or death consequences. "These biases aren't character flaws," Dr. Rodriguez explained as officers reviewed their test results with uncomfortable recognition. "They're the result of cultural conditioning, media exposure, and social environments that have taught your brains to make split-second associations. The goal isn't to eliminate these biases, that's probably impossible. The goal is to recognize them and develop strategies to prevent them from influencing your actions." Over the following weeks, Morrison's training intensified. Tuesdays were spent at the Community Justice Center learning about the neurological basis of prejudice. Wednesdays involved ride-alongs with community activists who shared stories of police encounters from the civilian perspective. Thursdays meant volunteering at youth centers in predominantly black neighborhoods, working with kids who had learned to fear police officers. The most challenging sessions were Fridays at Roosevelt Elementary, where Morrison worked with Maya Williams' class on the community safety program. The 8-year-old girl who had asked him to learn to be better became his most effective teacher. "Mr. Jake," Maya said during one session, "why do some grown-ups think people with dark skin are scary?" The question was simple, but answering it required Morrison to confront centuries of American history, media representation, and cultural conditioning that had shaped his unconscious associations. "Maya, some grown-ups learned wrong things when they were kids," Morrison replied carefully. "They saw movies or heard stories that taught them to be afraid of people who look different. But those wrong things can be unlearned. Are you unlearning the wrong things?" "I'm trying very hard to unlearn them, Maya. Every day I'm trying to be better." The conversation was recorded as part of Morrison's training documentation, later used in police academies to demonstrate how bias affects not just adults but shapes children's perceptions of safety and justice. The rest of the story is in the next video.